Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 155. The High Ground.
Welcome into Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Each week on Mission Log, we watch an episode of Star Trek, examining it for meanings, morals, messages, and seeing whether all of that and the production itself stand the test of time.
We also do trivia. We have a few laughs. So join us, won't you?
That was very congenial of you.
Well, thank you. I'm trying to be as welcoming as I can to our new and old listeners, Ken.
That's very nice. This week, by the way, we should tell people what we're doing. We are taking the high ground. Or are we? Now we'll try to decide that in a bit. First, though, we want to let you know how you can get in touch with us. Mission Log Pod is the address to find us on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we would love that. You can call us 323-522-5641. That number again, 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And please do remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. If you got a little trivia you'd like to shoot our way, well, that is the kind of thing that John Champion does. He'd probably love to hear that. In the meantime, here's the trivia he's already got.
All right, Ken. Today's episode, The High Ground, was written by Melinda M. Snodgrass. She, who we know pretty well by now. Her original story for this episode would have been something quite different, more of a parallel to the American Revolution, but pressure from her producers led to reframing this story as a closer parallel to the situation in contemporary Ireland. Now, it was directed by Gabrielle Beaumont. We've talked about how Beaumont was the first woman to earn a directing credit on Star Trek, and we talked about her interesting and varied career as a director and producer. As a slight parallel to today's show, she directed an episode of Miami Vice called Heroes of the Revolution, which takes place mostly in flashback about Revolutionary-era Cuba. Now, we've talked about how a handful of episodes may have been banned in various countries due to certain content. This is one of those episodes. In it, Data makes reference to the Irish reunification of 2024, and hence it was banned in the UK and Ireland until 2006 when it aired on Sky One, but with Data's line cut. It finally did air in full in 2007 on BBC Two. Now, let's talk about the guest stars in today's show. Christopher Petiet as the boy. Christopher was a child actor, some of his very first credits being this episode, as well as Doogie Howser, MD, L.A. Law, and then the feature film Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. He was a regular on the short-lived Western series The Young Riders, and he returned to a few guest star roles after that. Very sadly, he died from a drug overdose at the age of 24. Now, Mark Buckland played the waiter, and what we're seeing here is actually Buckland's very last credited performance as an actor. But don't feel bad for Mark. He went on to become a very successful director and producer on such shows as Murder One, Scrubs, My Name is Earl, and many more. In fact, Buckland picked up an Emmy and a DGA award for his work on My Name is Earl. Now, Richard Cox plays Finn. Mr. Cox started pretty young in the business. His parents were both professional dancers, and he started performing at age 8. He spent a lot of time in live theater, then moved over to TV and film in the 70s, and he appeared on too many shows to get into here, but to name a few, Sanford & Son, 8 is Enough, Magnum P.I., L.A. Law, The X-Files. More recently, he has appeared on The Mentalist and CIS Los Angeles, and he has a recurring role on the political comedy Alpha House.
And I got to tie us back into actually into the original series. With Mr. Cox, yeah. Because he's one of those guys that you see him, you're like, oh, he's been in everything, and yet I can't name a single thing he was in.
Right.
And so I went to IMDb, and what do I see up there? He actually did, apparently he had a role on The Guiding Light. And who had a role on The Guiding Light? Michael Zaslow. The Zaz. Who was the guy who we thought was eating stuff off the ground in The Man Trap.
You're a big fan of the Zaz.
I'm a big fan of the Zaz. And I'm a big fan of the Man Trap, and that being the first aired episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Not the first one produced, but the first aired episode of Star Trek. We can draw a line straight from season 3, episode 12. all the way back to original series, episode 1.
That's very cool.
That's kind of fun.
All right. And finally, Carrie Keene as Alexana. Keene is another steady-working actor who has made a career from mostly guest roles on TV shows. X-Files again, JAG, recurring role on Beverly Hills 90210. She's been on Castle, Seventh Heaven, NCIS, and a recurring role on The Young and the Restless. She is also the founder of the White Buffalo Theater Company here in Los Angeles, which, as of this recording, is on a break, but they have a wealth, a huge background of performances to their credit.
And funny story about her and Michael Zaslow. I can find absolutely no correlation between the two.
I'm cutting you off. I'm cutting you off. Enough of the Zaz.
Hooray. Another lighthearted, whimsical, almost fluffy episode of Star Trek. John, tell us all about it.
Prologue. The Enterprise crew are just doing what they do, delivering medical supplies, bringing peace and help, and a little of that Federation love where it's needed. And boy, is it needed here. Rutia IV, where the local government has been taking a beating from the Ansata separatist group. Right on cue, a bomb explodes near where Dr. Crusher and Worf are having lunch. The doctor jumps into action, tending to the wounded, and defies Picard's orders to beam back up to the safety of the Enterprise. A local security team shows up, led by Alexana Devos. But before the area can be secured, another Ansata separatist appears and a flash of light kills one of the security crew and disappears just as quickly with Dr. Crusher. Act 1. The Ansata who appeared and disappeared with Dr. Crusher didn't use a conventional transporter, which makes him and the missing doctor very hard to track. Data and Riker and everyone else will keep working on that. You know who else will work on that? Wesley. It would be no good to beam him down to the surface, but it might do him some good to work on tracking how the terrorists can beam in without a transporter. Tough position to be in, but Troy and Picard assure him that the Ansata are likely keeping his mother safe. Alexana then tells Picard and Riker that the separatists are animals. She has no idea what they'll do to Beverly, but she does offer up a piece of technology they took from a dead terrorist, something that might help them crack whatever transporter method they're using. She also asks for weapons, and Picard politely declines. Meanwhile, Beverly meets Kirill Finn, the leader of these rebels. He's walking a line somewhere between tough, scary, and charming, creepy. She's not having it either way. She's also not eating, doing her own version of peaceful protest. But Finn insists that she's only hurting herself. He interrogates her about what the Federation is doing there. They must be in cahoots with the Rutian government, but she insists that they are only bringing medical supplies. He knows he's the one causing all the pain and need for medical care. When he starts to get tough, Beverly gets scared. She has a son on the Enterprise, but Finn assures the doctor he won't kill her. Act 2. Beverly asks Finn if she can beam down some supplies from the Enterprise to tend to his wounded. Again, she insists. They have no political horse in this race. He says no, but he motions for a young boy to bring over, what's this? Federation medical supplies? They have people everywhere, and they were able to snag some of what the Enterprise was bringing to Rutia IV. Riker is trying to learn whatever he can from Alexana. She has a database of information on the Ansata and the people who are sympathizers. The story goes that 70 years ago, the Rutian government on the Western Hemisphere denied independence for the Ansata, and the battle has waged ever since. Alexana has seen the worst of it, including the bombings that have killed children. Beverly has been doing her job, and she reveals to Finn that his people are dying on a cellular level. He knows what's going on. Their transporter isn't exactly a transporter, it's what they call an inverter, and that device moves them interdimensionally to get them to where they want to go. Finn doesn't really seem to care that it's happening to him, too. If he dies, he'll probably become more powerful as a martyr to their cause. On the Enterprise, Wesley, Data, and Geordi LaForge have learned, well, basically they've learned what I just told you that Beverly learned. Interdimensional transport, folded space, slowly killing them, yada, yada, yada. Riker is getting more of the tour from Alexana. She tells him that her predecessor was murdered. She's the kinder, gentler replacement. She has resolved to wipe out the threat of terrorism, even if it means arresting children. Beverly catches Finn doing something creative. He likes to draw when he's not plotting attacks, or maybe he is plotting attacks. He can just do both things at once. She gets worked up about his casual attitude toward killing, Then he gives her a history lesson. She's from the area where George Washington fought for independence, just like Finn is now. And she schools Finn that he is killing innocent people, not the same thing Washington was doing. Then Finn calls her out. She's living the comfortable life because other people fought before her, killed and died for freedoms that she now enjoys. He's willing to do the same thing. Act 3. Back to the interrogations. Alexana is bringing in everyone she can, including the waiter who is at the cafe where Beverly and Worf were enjoying lunch until things got explodey. Riker is fed up with the theatrics. He tells the waiter to pass along a message. The Federation is willing to talk, to hear terms, if it will help them get their doctor back. And with that, the suspect is free to go. Data has made progress, too. He's finding a way to track the interdimensional shifts the Ansata make, but he's confused about their motivation. Picard explains that even though they abhor violence, sometimes violent uprising is successful, even necessary. There is no easy answer. The waiter makes his way back to the Ansata cave where Beverly is being held. He tells Finn what happened to him, and Finn starts filling in the blanks with his own version of the story. The Federation must be concocting these arrests to force them to release Beverly. She says that's probably not what's happening, but he is ready to proceed with his own plan, to blow up the Enterprise, which means everyone will have to listen to the Ansata demands. She begs him not to. Her son is on board. He's not moved, though. His own son died in routine detention when he was only 13. The attack begins immediately. Ansata terrorists use their dimensional transporter to invade the Enterprise, disabling crew members with ease. One places a bomb on the warp core, which Geordi is just able to remove and transport far enough away to not cause any damage. As a backup, Finn himself and one of his fellow rebels transport directly to the bridge. In the fight that ensues, Worf is hit with an Ansata phaser, and Finn manages to transport away with Captain Picard after a fistfight. Picard finds himself in the same cave where Beverly is prisoner. Act 4. Picard tells Beverly everything he knows. There was an attack. Wesley is okay as far as he knows. They're getting closer to being able to track the terrorists, mostly thanks to his hard work. Then Beverly starts kind of defending Finn. She says he might be mad, or he might just be committed to his just cause. Picard is pretty sure it's the former, and not the latter. Finn is okay with the outcome. He welcomes the attention of Federation involvement now. He explains to Picard that the value in Federation involvement is that the Rutian government will have to start listening to the demands of the terrorists, because now the Federation will force it. Finn makes an appearance of a different kind now. He transports back to the Enterprise, but this time just to confront Deanna Troi. He explains what he wants. The Federation will embargo any support of the Rutian government and blockade anyone else from attempting to do so. That will remain in place until a negotiation can be set up. The captain and Dr. Crusher will remain safe if the demands are met. They have 12 hours to comply. While all that was happening, Wesley got what he needed. He can now track where the interdimensional transport is occurring, and that leads the bridge crew to find the caves where the Ansata are holed up. A rescue party is assembled. Act 5. Beverly is back to seriously disliking Finn's tactics. He announces that he may have to kill Picard. She lashes out at him for controlling through fear, a cheap weapon if there ever was one. When she walks away, he stops her by revealing what he's been working on. Pencil drawings of her, just like one of his French girls. She's confused, but then she's a doctor, not an art critic. The rescue party is beamed in and stealthily goes to work, silently knocking out a few guards here and there. Beverly, unaware of what's about to happen, finds Picard in mid-thought about an escape plan. She reveals to him that she has at least in some way won Finn's trust. That may be useful, but because the situation is so dire, she really feels that right now is the time to reveal something very personal to her captain. Too bad we won't get to hear it. Then things get a little chaotic when the rescue party knocks out the generators in the cave, disorienting the Ansata for a moment. Fights ensue, and Finn sees the opportunity. He grabs a weapon and approaches Picard, ready to pull the trigger. But before he can, Alexana steps in from the shadows and opens fire, killing Finn at the last minute. Riker sees what happened and admonishes Alexana. She explains that captured alive, he might be a target in prison. Dead, he may be a martyr, but the attacks may stop, at least for a little while. That same little boy who helped Dr. Crusher with the medical supplies earlier now enters holding a formidable weapon of his own, trained on Alexana. Then Dr. Crusher puts on her mom voice that Wesley must have heard 100 times, "No more killing." Sure, that boy could have killed Alexana, but Riker sees the bright side. That's one boy who, for now, put down his gun. Beverly and Wesley share a warm reunion on the bridge until Picard is like, "Seriously, I would really like to get out of here." The end.
I'm going to concentrate on something that's not important at all.
I think we have to.
Yeah, because there's going to be important stuff. Love the effect of transporting with the inverter, and I love the planet Rutia. I love the Rutian lasers because they're like lasers.
Although it was interesting, they called them phasers.
Did they really?
Alexana calls it a phaser, and I was really surprised by that because it didn't feel like one. It didn't phase you; it lased you.
Yeah, no, right. It was like something you'd see in Star Wars. And here's the thing: I don't want to do the whole Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever. But I get turned on sometimes by weaponry that's different or by effects that are different.
Oh yeah,
like the whole the whole inverter thing was just fascinating. It's just like it is a tear in the fabric of space and time. That's what they're doing. They're traveling interdimensionally, which is a mind blowing thing to sort of think about. But what it really looks like is like somebody ripped off the wallpaper of existence and let you jump through the wall and then jump out someplace else. It was kind of awesome. I like the effects. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And then they do it, and then they get a nosebleed, and worse. And
then Jean Big Boutte comes and says, "Hey, stop that."
Right.
It's another dimension joke.
Dr. Crusher has some interesting conversations with Finn. And there was one where I wondered if this is really good defense of what's going on. He basically says, you're an idealist. And she says, "I live in an ideal culture."
Oh.
Which kind of helps explain why she can be an idealist.
Exactly. Oh, okay then. Well, my bad. Yeah, right. I didn't realize that you live on the high ground. See, I'm just trying to get to the high ground.
Yeah. To which I say, in the 70s you could be an idealist. In the 80s, it's too expensive, and that's just a little pop culture nugget for somebody to find. Now, one thing you can't argue with is Dr. Crusher's logic, because he's complaining about, when we jump through the interdimensional transport, it's killing us. And she's like, oh, it hurts when you do that thing? Don't do the thing.
Oh, but, he's going to go, "I'm going to do the thing." Yes. Yeah. What's his name again? Finn?
Yeah.
I want that picture now. We got the picture of Kirk and Spock doing that.
Right. And
don't do the thing. I'm going to do the thing. Right. I want one with Beverly and Finn. Don't do the thing. I'm going to do the thing.
Exactly.
And die. Yeah. I got to say, I went back and forth on his portrayal. Sometimes he was a little too hangdog. Sometimes he was a little too, I don't know. He was. You said earlier that what's her name, Alexana, was the kinder, gentler authoritarian in this.
Oh, right.
He's the kinder, gentler terrorist, right?
He is,
because he's fairly nice. He's fairly sweet. He's like, "Oh, this is a bad way to meet people, isn't it? And please eat something. It hurts me that you won't eat something."
Yeah.
And then at one point, Beverly says, he's talking about the fact that they brought supplies, they brought medical stuff to the bad guys or the good guys, depending on which side you're on.
Right.
And Beverly says people were hurt, and Finn says, "I know, I hurt them." Yeah. And so like, that's right. He's the heavy, or is he? He is a force to be reckoned with. He is something with which to be dealt. He is someone with whom to be taken seriously, not just the love-struck puppy that he looked like half the time he was with Beverly.
Right. Well, see, I kind of get the impression that everything he's doing is right out of the terrorist playbook. And we can talk about the Stockholm syndrome that she has, but, every single thing that he does is a piece of manipulation. So that flipping back and forth between, I'm going to help you, I'm going to hurt you, I'm charming and friendly, but I'm also cold and callous, and, all of that stuff.
See, I don't know if we're going to come back to that stuff or not. I'm not 100% certain that he was just being cold and calculating. I understand what you're saying, but I don't even know that she suffered from the Stockholm syndrome, honestly.
Well, and I'm not saying that he can't be both, but everything that he does, he uses to his advantage.
Well, I don't. That you're assuming then that he's a bad guy, and should we save this for? I don't know if we get back into this in the next segment or not, honestly, because I don't know that our notes automatically lead to it, except I don't know that our notes can't lead to it.
Yeah, well,
You're making statements about him that I'm not sure I agree with. Put another way, and I guess this is going to come up later, would you say the same thing about George Washington or Ben Franklin? He was charming, he was disarming, and he was affiliated with the terrorist organization back in 1763 to 1776.
Yeah. Yeah, well.
And we don't think of him that way. We think, oh, God, he was smart and he was funny, he was erudite, and we still quote him today. And nobody's going to do that with Mr. Finn, of course, because he's, stuff on the cave floor now. What's that? Like I say, we're gonna end up coming back to it. So
sure.
Got a little heavy for this segment, didn't we?
Yeah, I tell you something we can agree on.
What's that?
We love seeing Picard take a leap and a punch at Finn.
Yeah, nice, right?
Yeah,
it was totally cool when he did that.
Why was Microbrain back there so slow with the uptake?
What are you talking about?
I mean, Worf is the first in line to grab a phaser and just start shooting.
Yeah, well, he was a little surprised.
Yeah, well, that's not like him. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Had to happen.
I quite like Beverly in this episode. I mean, I don't think there are huge challenges for her as a character, as an actor. Mm-hmm. But she is right on the mark with what is required of the performance. And there are nice moments without dialogue.
Yes.
Giving a look.
Her best moments are, I think, without dialogue or almost without dialogue, because the dialogue, honestly, is a little too earnest. It's a little too, I mean, we use this phrase a lot. It's a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
But when she finds out that Finn plans to blow up the Enterprise, she tears up. And I don't know if it's just that she's more comfortable with the character now or if it's better direction or whatever, but we've almost never seen that from her, I don't think. I mean, again, it's interesting, too, that one of her best scenes now before that was the one in The Departed, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Departed, when she and Wes are having their moment. And she goes over and is practically crying and hugs him just to, keep him quiet because she can't deal.
Yeah,
that's kind of interesting. Yeah, the look between Picard and Crusher as well. Mm-hmm. When Picard ends up a prisoner of Finn's down in the cave, they both have it was a great look, and it was only a look. But I mean, there's not quite a smile, but there's definitely a warmth and a gratitude expressed by both of them, without heaving bosom, without breaking into a big grin,
right?
Without anything. It's kind of great.
Yeah. How about the thing with Irish unification in 2024? I mean, I can see how this would be touchy, and I wonder if part of the context of it being understood that this is a bloody and violent upheaval that has to continue before there is reunification, if that's the part that is so distasteful to those who would ban it in the UK, who did ban it in the UK.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
Next question.
Okay.
I don't know what it's like today, but I mean, I know that when I was in Boston in the late 80s, early 90s, I could still walk around Charlestown and see IRA graffiti. We're much further removed from daily violence in the conflicts between, and I know nothing about all of it. I apologize. My knowledge of the fight between the IRA and the British government, or the UK government, is next to nil. But I do know that it's not nearly as violent as it was when we were much younger, and we were certainly a lot closer in 1990 when this episode aired. So I could see, saying,
Well, we certainly hear considerably less of it now than we did in the 80s. I remember hearing a lot about it in the 80s, and that's just sort of my own ignorance now of what exactly the situation is.
I am woefully ignorant, to the point that I kind of want to edit this part out. I'll leave the part where I say I'm woefully ignorant. In fact, we'll start the show that way.
Well, all right, and then I think we have to talk about Riker's, really powerful message. You didn't have to kill him.
I'm sorry, I was just taking a sip of coffee and I nearly spit it all over my computer. I didn't think you were going there yet. Yeah, I wanted somebody to go, oh, what's this on your communicator? But is that blood of Utah?
Yeah.
Is that what that is? And I know we talked about
doesn't wash out.
There is no Riker. I know that was that episode, and so we kind of have to be forgiving. When Riker gets all high and mighty in this episode and says, you didn't have to kill him, we kind of have to forgive that because I was so willing to let him be bendy in that episode. Mm-hmm. It still might have been good to have somebody else deliver that line.
Right.
Now, maybe that episode hadn't aired yet when this episode was produced, and maybe Melinda M. Snodgrass, and certainly it hadn't aired when she wrote it. Mm-hmm. Or the director, whose name I forgot, Beaumont.
Gabrielle Beaumont.
Yeah, maybe Ms. Beaumont had not seen it.
Yeah.
But somebody probably should have said, hey, remember that time Riker killed that woman for no reason? Maybe he shouldn't call somebody else out for killing a guy for no reason.
Yeah, give that line to Picard. Maybe it takes on a little different meaning then.
Oh, you see, giving it to Picard would have been cool. Although Picard already had the best line of the show, I think.
Which was?
So, so Beverly is really gets the fact that they may die now. Or at least he may die.
Right.
And so whatever happens, she wants him to know something. Jean-Luc, there are some things I want to tell you in case we don't get out of this. And then the lights go down. And Picard is like, oh, is that the sweet sound of death come to release me from this conversation? I mean, have they found us?
I don't think he actually said those words.
I don't think he actually said those words, no. But I mean, boy, there was not even a second of, what were you saying, Beverly? It was more like oh, wow, distraction.
In this segment, Ken gets a little worked up. See if you can tell when.
It's weird to me that this episode follows so closely on The Hunted. Mm-hmm. I'm used to a little, on again, off again, as far as your politics or your governmental questions, things like that. Do you know what I mean? It's not usually just one big government thing after another big government thing. Although, then again, Season 1 and Season 2 of Next Gen, it wasn't usually anything. It's hey, that was a good episode. Oh, that was a bad episode. So, there was something that I kept meaning to bring up last week, though, and I forgot to because last week's discussion was so full. Mm-hmm. Federation keeps siding with authority without question, or keeps siding with the established authority without question. Picard is aware of the plight of the separatists. He actually says it in the captain's log. Like in the beginning, he's like, yeah, terrorists, because they wanted to be independent, and they're not, and so now everything's on lockdown, and nobody can go down there and have fun, and everybody has to carry a phaser.
Right.
But he's bringing medical supplies to the established government. Mm-hmm. There are two sides to this conflict, and whether you agree with the other side or not, theoretically, we're not involved in the conflict at all. But we are going to help one side stay healthy, which is kind of weird. It reminded me of Kirk's palling around with the Frank Gorshin character in Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. Two guys show up at the Enterprise, and one's like, I'm running from a guy. And the other guy is like, I'm government, and I'm chasing that guy. And so Kirk is having dinner with the Frank Gorshin character, the guy who is theoretically from the government of this planet that nobody's ever heard of, right?
Sure.
And the other character, whose name I can't even begin to remember, is sort of below decks.
Commissioner Beale and Lokai.
Well, okay, good for you.
There you go.
John gets 5 points for this episode. So Lokai, meantime, is below decks, like talking to the rabble, talking to the red shirts, talking to the people who don't have captains' bars upon theirs. Right. And it's just interesting to me that they always, sort of seem to jump that way. Picard assumed that Prime Minister Nayrock in The Hunted was in the right against Roga Danar. Now, at least, the Enterprise doesn't help hunt the Ansata, or, give weapons to the Rutian government to hunt the Ansata. But it's still just sort of interesting to me that we show up and we're like, we're not going to take sides. So who's got the most toys? Oh, you've got the most toys? Okay, we're going to give you whatever you need, because we're not thinking about what's actually happening here. We just want to help.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is still implicit support. I mean, at the very least, by giving them medical supplies, you heal one of their soldiers to go back out to the front line.
Right. Yeah, Finn makes the case pretty well. You're not involved, or you say you're not involved, but you're just supplying one side, which just happens to be crushing, the other side, which just happens to be my side.
Right.
And those, again, since you were so fond of pointing that out earlier, are not actual words spoken by the character. But I mean, that's his point. His point is, look, you guys are neck deep in this because you're keeping them healthy, and we've got a boot on our head.
Yeah. I mean, well, you said it. It's, Finn saying you've already cooperated just by coming here. So then I wonder, what do we make of that in terms of Starfleet's, interference versus non-interference? Well, it's sort of not a classic Prime Directive thing where we just completely stay out of it because they didn't contact us. We don't know them. We don't want to mess up their culture. Mm-hmm. But this is a political interference versus non-interference issue. And we are involved every time we do business with places that don't have the best human rights records, maybe, or with governments that are in various stages of upheaval. Even if it's accidental, you become involved and sway things one way or the other. So, but then the difficult moral question becomes, well, what is our obligation to the people who are oppressed or unheard in those places? The Enterprise is flying by, and it's the Rutian government hailing them saying, hey, we've got people dying down here. Can you help us? Does the Enterprise just stop and say, okay, send us some more information and we'll think about it? Well, I mean, ideally, I guess what the Enterprise would do is start a private little war, right? So they give supplies to the Rutian government, and then they give supplies to the Ansata separatists, and eventually they just get to keep fighting each other forever. I mean, the other thing that's weird about this, and we don't know how long the Federation has been dealing with these people, but I mean, it is established that they have a long-standing trade agreement with the Rutian government. Mm-hmm. So this could go back to Kirk. This could go back to pre-Kirk. I mean, this could go back a long time. It's only 70 years that this has been happening, but it's kind of interesting then that you would just keep dealing with them. So let's say 80, 90 years ago, there was no problem. And the Ansata decided 20 years into the dealings with the Federation, you know what we want to do is something else. And so does the Ansata or do the Rutian government then just keep it quiet and hope the Federation doesn't find out? Or do they know that the Federation's not going to care? Because here's the other thing. They say they have a trade agreement. Is the trade agreement you give us stuff and we'll be happy? Or is the trade agreement you give us stuff and we'll get something else? Because then you kind of have to wonder about why Starfleet or the Federation would look the other way on something like this. But that's now I'm totally making up another story that might be good for the follow-on novel. It's you give us stuff and we will give you access to our lovely outdoor cafes.
That's true. The best coffee in the Rutian system. Of course, there's only one inhabited planet in the Rutian system, but still, you're not going to find better coffee on Rutia 3 nor 5. No. And nor will you find people nor cafes. No. I thought, so here's the thing. We find out who we're dealing with in a way when Alexandra says, these are not people we're dealing with here. They're animals, fanatics who kill without remorse or conscience, who think nothing of murdering innocent people. This episode does a great job of making the terrorists human for Star Trek's target audience. He's a soft-spoken guy. He's white. He's concerned for Beverly. He's an artist. He's taken with Beverly. And he's not a zealot in a way. He's for his cause, but he's not motivated. I was going to say he's not motivated by politics or religion. He's definitely not motivated by religion. He is motivated by politics, I suppose, but his politics are, I just want to be me. I just want to be free. He wants freedom for his people. As Americans, we totally get that. More today, it seems, than in days past. And I don't know why more today than in days past. Something somewhere is convincing a lot of people, as we record this today, that their freedoms are being impinged. And please don't argue with me about whether they are or not, because that's not the part that I want to get into. I just want to say that this is actually something that speaks to a lot of people on a lot of levels, would have in the early 90s when it came out, might even more so today, except for the part, of course, where we end up being, on some level, I think we end up rooting for the terrorists in this, if you want to call them that. That's sort of like your retelling of Code of Honor, without the blatant racism. Mm-hmm. I wonder if giving Finn a different accent or a darker skin tone or something like that, and granted, this was made to be more like the conflict in Ireland or around Ireland, which you and I have both confessed we completely don't understand. But I wonder if you retold this story today and gave that guy sort of a different casting treatment, let's say.
Yeah.
Is there any part of this episode that would be palatable to viewers? I will say really quickly, though, I spent most of the time thinking that Devos, or Alexana, was a horrible person. And then she gets pretty humanized at this one point where, she's like talking about rounding up kids and arresting people and all this stuff. And Riker says, "Is that what you want?" And she says, "I want to go home. I want this to be done. I'd like to be finished, but it's not. So I got to finish it so that I eventually can go home." I mean, they did not do as good a job, I don't think, of humanizing the Rutian government side. But once they do, I mean, I actually did end up buying it from her when she's practically crying about, I hate this. I hate this and I want it to stop. But it's not going to stop just by me stopping. So I got to keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. I don't get the impression fully that, yes, we have humanized Finn, but I don't get the impression fully that he hates this. I get the impression that this is who he is now. And yeah, things may have been different at some point, but he's younger than 70 as far as we know. This is the only thing that he knows. His motivation is political. He's not a religious fanatic, but he's certainly a political fanatic. And we actually don't know what they want because we don't know the details of the politics of this place. We know that they wanted freedom, they didn't get it, and now the Ansata have been fighting for it. Right. But when he says we want a place at the table, we don't know what that entails. And maybe the Ansata, maybe the Eastern Hemisphere were just horrible to deal with. I mean, there's so little that we have to go on, and I get it that Star Trek does what Star Trek does, which is to at least try to give us some common ground to understand where that person is coming from, who is just the enemy painted in big, bold strokes.
Right.
And I think we get that a little bit here, but I feel like both sides here are sort of, they're just sort of presented as archetypes,
Well, yes.
Yeah, well, because they have to be,
Right, you have 48 minutes, and we want to tell a compelling story. I mean, I thought they actually did a good job of, like I say, humanizing both sides. You say you don't know that Finn hates this. He doesn't say out loud the words that he hates this, but, I mean, we do know that what he hates more is living under what he considers to be an unjust rule. I mean, you say this is about Ireland, but, I mean, you can certainly see some of the same things that you would have seen if this show had stayed Omega Glory 2. Sort of a taxation without representation thing. I mean, he's saying what he wants is a place at the table. I mean, it's and I guess this is how it ties. We should stop talking. We should stop talking because I don't know enough about the conflict that this was actually built around or rewritten to. I mean, we have certainly, though, throughout the UK history, there were times when colonies were not heard, period, because they were colonies. I mean, they were people who were part of an empire. They were people who were part of a government, part of an organization, whatever, but not an active part of it. They were suppliers of things. They were markers of how far the empire extended, right? Yeah. And the impression that we get. And yes, it's a very broad stroke thing, but you're doing the same thing I was doing a minute ago of trying to write the novel when what we've got is a TV show to work with. Sure. I mean, we're given to understand that these are people who want freedom. They're being denied freedom. They're not being talked to about why they should have freedom or why the freedom is denied. And yeah, it does make me want to dig deeper into it, except we don't have a deeper into which to dig. And so then we have to answer the question based on what's put in front of us, right?
Well, I have a note here that I kind of struggle with because to me it almost seems kind of quaint that the fight that Finn has on his hands is one for equal representation. Because, here we are kind of dancing around this idea of what we know or don't know about Irish, the struggle in Ireland.
And let's be clear, we know nothing.
Yeah. If
you and me personally, and
but this is when this episode was written. In today's world, in recording this episode today in the early 21st century, terrorism is motivated by all kinds of ideological positions, but the seeming desired result is maybe not peaceful coexistence. Well, our understanding, when somebody says the word terrorism today, it means something different than it did in 1987 or 89 or 90 when we were thinking about car bombs in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So the thing that we see today is about destroying the enemy or supplanting one form of rule with another. And this, honestly, is where I part ways with the episode. And this is where I think I'm going to have a huge blind spot. And maybe it's only because they were using the word terrorism throughout. And that word has a totally different connotation now.
Well, except that Finn makes the point. He says, well, I've got the line someplace. What is it? The difference between terrorist and general is who wins. And that's not the exact line, but I can't find the exact line here.
Yeah, the idea of history being written by the victorious. Yeah,
well, that too, but no, he actually says a line in here someplace. Yeah. He calls Beverly out, and he's like, "So you're from America, right?" And she says, "North America," and he says, "I'm George Washington." And this whole thing that we're talking about here, okay, flash forward 400 years, I'm George Washington. She says, George Washington was a military general, not a terrorist. And he says, the difference between terrorist and general is, I still don't have the line. I had all the rest of that. Is victory, though, basically. I mean, yes, as you say, history is written by the victorious.
Well, yeah, but Beverly rightly calls him out and says that Washington was a military general.
No, he wasn't.
On a military campaign.
No, he was not. He was only that because we won. Listen,
if Great Britain, bombing schools full of British school children. They simply weren't.
Well, they weren't in Great Britain, though, were they? Look, and that's fine. You can say that, and yes, I understand. I understand there are varying degrees of terror, but had the UK won, had Great Britain won the Revolutionary War instead of the U.S. winning the Revolutionary War, then George Washington would be remembered as a terrorist. He would be remembered as a bloody guy who killed how many of the king's loyal subjects? Benedict Arnold, by the way, is a jerk. He's an absolute jerk. But I'll bet if Great Britain had won, Benedict Arnold would be remembered as the hero who bested that traitorous villain, George Washington. I mean, look, what this whole episode is about is your side is not necessarily right just because it's your side. I mean, there are other things it's about, too, but that's one of the... I mean, boiling it all down, and forgive me for skipping into the end, still don't kill. I mean, that really is what the whole thing's about. I mean, this whole thing really hinges on somebody's got to stop killing at some point. And good news, this little kid decided not to kill today. And so maybe we get to get... Or you guys, you Rutians, get to get past this. But I mean, for you to say that George Washington was a military general and this other guy is a terrorist is just, I mean, it is proving the point that history is written by the victors, because we weren't an established military before we said, you know what, that's it, screw this, we're going to be an established military now because we need to get together on what we're doing. That's the only difference. But had we lost, he could have been the leader of the largest terrorist organization that the British colonies on North America ever saw.
Yeah, but by that time, the colonies had a provisional government. They had an army. They had they were still making their own rules.
They were also making it up.
Well, yeah. I mean,
well,
that's
so
fine,
so
but
what's
again,
the difference? So then tell me what the difference is between that and what Finn was doing. You say blowing up school children. Yes, I understand that, but they say that was an accident. They said that was an accident, and they didn't believe that. And so if you want to tell me that nobody innocent died at the hands of an American during the Revolutionary War...
I'm not saying that nobody innocent died during the Revolutionary War.
No, I said at the hands of an American. I'm flabbergasted that you can't see his parallel. I mean, do you really think he was full of crap when he said, I'm George Washington?
No. I do see the parallel. I do absolutely. Beverly also has a point. I mean, she absolutely does.
Absolutely. Yes.
This campaign that they're carrying out is something very different, and we don't know what they have gone through up until that point. How much of a redress of grievances have they attempted with the other government? What other steps have they gone through? Picard's the guy who always says, okay, you tried to negotiate and the negotiations didn't go the way you wanted them to. Try again. Right. Do it again. Right. Did it 18 times, do it a 19th time. You know?
Yes.
So
I guess that's true. As long as he never had some, I don't know, insurrection or something, then that's absolutely true. Picard is always that guy, until the minute that he's not. It's actually kind of weird to me that he's so, well, whatever.
I was going to say, I wanted to talk about something that's related.
Okay.
That is Data's point to Picard.
Yes.
Because he's right. And there are many times in history when an armed infraction, violent revolution, okay, we can call it terrorism from whatever point of view you want to call it that it has been successful.
Is it just as we sit here and record this, is it just how that word is used today that makes you so uncomfortable using it in any other circumstance?
I think partly. That may have, like I said, that might be my blind spot.
Okay.
But Picard says, Picard is right that he still doesn't subscribe to the theory that political power comes from the barrel of a gun. And then this episode maybe asks us the question, what if the shoe was on the other foot? You mentioned The Hunted, and I thought about The Hunted as well, that there is a kind of moral ambiguity there around the idea that Danar and his men are using an armed incursion to make their point known. We and the Federation are saying we're implicitly on their side given the reality of their situation, but is it still right that it plays out with violence? So then we come to this sort of question of when is it right to resort to violence to make one's voice heard? Martin Luther King subscribed to a strict practice of nonviolence. Did he succeed? Well, arguably, yes. There are many successes from his campaign, but did it take others who did use violence to help their movements succeed? Picard would weigh on the side of nonviolence, but still he kind of sees the point, and I guess this is a cognitive dissonance that he and Data maybe it's a more difficult road for him because he's an android.
Yeah. Yeah. We've beaten up on the Enterprise crew over the past few episodes for not letting the computer do it. Where it equals whatever outside the box thinking has to be done, right?
Yeah.
Data actually makes the case for people and against logic in a lot of these situations, I think, by his inability to understand using the inverter to achieve a goal, when the inverter will ultimately kill the users, right?
Yeah.
That's a leap that he can't make, just as he can't make the leap for, well, he does make the leap for violence, though. I don't know. There seems to be a disdain coming from everyone for anyone who would fight such a seemingly insurmountable foe as the Rutian government. And it seems to come especially from Picard. And this strikes me as odd because boy, does he love France. The land of his birth. It should be noted he's not returning home to the rule of Louis the 28th, right?
Right.
Revolution is built into his history.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just strange to me. He uses terms like irrational, and then he holds so tight to the rule of law. But and again, what's his name? Finn did say that your federation is built on how many bombings and how many wars and how many innocent people have died, right? Yeah. And yet Picard is totally like, Data says, these guys doing what they're doing, it's totally a rational act. Talking about using the inverter, and Picard says we may be dealing with an irrational people. Well, I think it was Times Squared that started off with Picard in the fencing match, right? And they repeated it, and that's why the line actually sticks with you. He pulls a move, and his opponent says something to the effect of, "I'm not familiar with that technique. What is it?" And Picard replies, "The technique of a desperate man." Okay,
yeah, right.
So this is not completely irrational for Picard, or it shouldn't be anyway. Unless, well, it's okay in a game, but, in real life, head down, eyes forward, do what you're told. The rational android, by the way, says terrorism works.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Picard's constant parry of Data's constant questions by saying, "Oh, you see, you're just so human." I'm getting tired of that. I mean, that's automatic. That's the end of the conversation. Every time Picard does that, Data has questions. I would really like it if Data had argued with him this time. Like, I really don't understand. You say violence is not the way, and I agree that violence is not the way, but so often violence is the way. And Picard's like, "Oh, that's just so human." And I wanted Data to go, yeah. We'll come back to that. Well, let's finish this conversation first, as opposed to it's almost like a safety that Dr. Soong built in. Like, just tell Data he's turning human, and he'll reboot. That's if you can't get to the little button in his side.
Right. He's got a cognitive dissonance chip. He has.
That's a funny idea.
So Finn does say something to Crusher that puts just the whole Star Trek thing into question. So at least this version of the 24th century version of it. He says that she is living in the peaceful, ideal world she does because other people were willing to kill or die for certain ideals before her. And it's sort of, you take that to logical extreme and you go, okay, well, is this perfect world of the 24th century just a lucky respite from war and strife until we hit the next one? Until there is another armed insurgency, until there is someone else who is unhappy with their lot. It's sort of, we keep giving the Enterprise a sort of like cool, detached, moralistic approach. And they get to walk away from this at the end. Boy, is it just a happy reunion, and we're back on our nice, sterile, clean, pretty bridge and get to go away. And set up cones and not come back to Rutia IV.
Yeah.
There is something kind of unpleasant about that. We have said, and we've seen, and we will see more of the idea that Earth's history is terrible and violent, and then at one point it got so bad that it had to get better. And fortunately, they've been kind of coasting along for maybe a couple of 100 years by the time we get to this era of the 24th century. That things are okay. We've wiped out a lot of problems, and we're doing okay. But this throws into question, what about the next one?
Well, it's not just about Earth's history either, though. I mean, you've got... I'm always envious of the people in the Federation. I'm always envious of people in Earth on the 23rd century and 24th century because we had aliens. Do you know what I mean? I mean, sure. We can't fathom on this planet right now that we need to work together.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I got to get it over on you, right? The Russians got to get it over on the U.S. and Iran's got to get it over on Iraq, and we've got to get it over on the Middle East and vice versa, right? And there are plenty of other, I told this story on this show before. It was like my friend from West Newton getting beaten up in Watertown. And they neighbor each other. They border each other. Those two cities border each other in the greater Boston metro. And one of them's got to beat up the other one because you're from there and I'm from here. The Watchmen, we were under the impression in the comic book, The Watchmen, that they were aliens. And suddenly when they were aliens, we on Earth kind of had to pull it together. In Star Trek, it's a little bit better because we have aliens who say, yeah, we've done this fighting thing, and it's really much cooler when you don't. Let me show you what a holodeck is like. Let me show you what real warp drive is like. Because it's cute what Prime Minister Nayrock built for you guys. I'm sorry, what Zephram Cochrane built for you guys. But let me show you what a real warp drive looks like. And let me take you to this other planet where they got green women. I mean, seriously, the universe is going to be great once you guys stop screwing around. And unfortunately, we don't have that. Right now, we just kind of have to believe that we need to stop screwing around because the universe might be great. Yeah, well, maybe for my grandkids, but not for you. So, head down, eyes forward, do what you're told. There was one other thing that needs to be addressed, I think. The list of Ansata sympathizers. As cool and as great as kinder, gentler. Alexandra or Alex, I can't remember how to pronounce it. Alexandra. As cool as she is now, there are maybe 200 active Ansata, she says, but they got a list of 5,000 people that they're willing to round up because these people think along those lines or are friendly with those people or may actually be giving them medical supplies and maybe giving them weapons too. Okay, that's fair. But this whole down to arresting children. It just,
it paints a nastier picture of the Rutian government for sure.
Yeah, Oh,
Sure.
by the way, here it is at the very end of all of my notes. The difference between generals and terrorist doctor is only the difference between winners and losers. When you're called a general. So said Mr. Finn.
One crime in this episode was not addressed. I do not think that Beverly paid for her lunch. Let us hope the guys talk about that.
All right, Ken, many difficult things to talk about in this episode, particularly because we admit how unprepared we were about certain geopolitics, but still many important issues to discuss here. But before we get into the final summation of what it's about, I want you to tell me if you think this episode holds up.
Do you mean production-wise or message-wise?
I mean production-wise first.
Production-wise, yeah, I think so. I mean, you're always going to get a little bit of cheesiness around costumes when you're talking about the 90s, unless somebody's gone way over the top. I didn't like the pants, honestly, on the Rutian government people. I didn't like the pants. I'm also a little confused by why every male has sort of the off-to-the-side skunk stripe. I loved the phasers, lasers, whatever, carried by the Rutians, both the Ansata and the Rutian government, and I love the inverter. I like the touch of like the artwork. I like the acting between Crusher and Picard. I didn't think the writing was as strong dialogue-wise as it could have been, but I think the writing, as far as story-wise or as ideas presented, was great. I feel really unprepared about the Ireland thing, but I didn't know until you did trivia that this was based on that, because it's not part of my history, and I was able to look at it and look at any number of things in history. So, I mean, I both feel ignorant because I am, but it's also not inherent, I don't think, except maybe the guy's name is Finn. It's not inherent in it that we're talking about a conflict in the UK and Ireland, that's or a political conflict at the very least that was going on then and has reverberations even today.
But let's be clear here that was an inspirational background. I mean, like I said, the original would have been more closely a parallel to the American Revolution.
Right.
This said, well, okay, we'll kind of take this slice out of what's happening in Ireland, but this is not about a specific thing going on there.
Okay.
So we can cut ourselves some slack on that.
Good. I still may go back and edit all of that out then. Except it would be very, very difficult to do at this point. So production-wise, yeah, I think it holds up. What about you?
Kind of. I mean, it depends on what you think the episode is trying to do here. So action.
Whoa. Are we talking about meaning, or are we talking about production? Well, because I assume you're talking about it's like filming and costume and all that stuff.
Yeah. No,
okay.
I'm getting there, but I think some of the writing maybe helps or hurts what's going on. So let's say for action, yes, there's some good action in this episode.
Yeah,
we get to see things blow up and it's paced nicely. Good performances, yes. I think there are some very good performances here. But I think that at the end of it, I kind of asked myself, well, what were they trying to accomplish by this episode? So it's shot pretty well. It's done pretty nicely. But then by the time you get to the end of it, did it really give you something to ponder? Is it the kind of thing that when I watched it again and again, did I feel like, I'm getting more out of this episode? And I feel like by the time you get to the end of the episode, what you're just getting to is a kill the bad guy episode. So that's where I think the episode doesn't hold up. And I'll discuss in detail what I think those notes are about the message and where that works or fails. But I think that's the problem with the episode, just taken as an episode. If we are talking about parallels of terrorism, okay, yeah, Star Trek can do that, certainly. And I like the idea that we get to ponder the differences between terrorists and freedom fighters, back to this idea of history being written by the victors. But in the end of it, I feel like what we accomplished was, like I said, killing the bad guy. And we're led to believe that this is probably, though not definitely, a good thing. You know, what about that seat at the table that Finn wanted? What about whatever injustices, real or perceived, that his people have experienced? That's another interesting angle here. They have misunderstood and misperceived almost everything that's gone on. So that's the part that turns me off from the episode. Ultimately, there's no statement about terrorism or about the use of violence or nonviolence for political needs. And I feel like Star Trek isn't good. It doesn't make it good Star Trek just because it takes a contemporary problem and makes it sci-fi and puts it back in our faces. I feel like Star Trek is good when it can challenge us to look at a problem in a new way. And that's what I feel like this episode doesn't do. So I am conflating the two a little bit, but that is part of my problem about the episode not holding up as an episode, as a production, because there are episodes of Star Trek that I can go back and rewatch just because maybe a performance was so powerful, or the message, or the by the time you get to the end of it, that ambiguity or that question that still lingers in your mind is so much more profound. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this one doesn't do it. It becomes very by rote by the time you get to the end of it.
I disagree.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't remember what your take was on A Private Little War. I don't remember whether you thought it held up or not, but I loved A Private Little War because it was a writer, and I can't remember if A Private Little War was Gene or not, but it was a writer. I believe it was Gene Roddenberry. That was a Gene Roddenberry story, wasn't it?
It was his story, yeah.
Okay. What I liked about A Private Little War was it was a writer sitting there going, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt like this episode was as well. I don't feel like this was a kill the bad guy episode. That is what happens. But I don't feel like that was meant to be seen as a solution. I don't know that that was meant to be seen as a good thing. The only victory in this episode, I think, is when the kid doesn't shoot her, Alexana. That, to me, is the only victory. That maybe that's a change. In sort of a mirror kind of way, just think about not doing this in sort of a Taste of Armageddon sort of way. We choose not to kill today. Mm-hmm. I mean, in all of those ways, that's maybe the only victory here. I like the fact that you have a terrorist who is obviously a terrorist who says, look, if I win, I'm not a terrorist, I'm a freedom fighter. If I lose, I'm a terrorist. If I win, I'm this. I'm not just whatever you're painting me as. And so for me, it did raise more serious questions, and I'm okay with it not answering the questions. The one thing that I do regret, Kirk was obviously disgusted at the end of A Private Little War. He obviously hated what he decided they had to do, and what they had to do was arm the other people just enough so that they could live in stalemate, because otherwise somebody was going to be wiped out entirely. And he hated that that's where they were right at that moment. But that's where they were right at that moment. Like you, I hate the fact that they have the nice cheerful reunion at the end and the sort of okay, if you're done hugging your mom, we'd like to leave now. Because what they've left them to is who knows what. Obviously, the Federation is officially still not going to get involved, and there's absolutely no reason to think that now Alexana is going to go, oh, well, that kid didn't kill me. Maybe it will be worth talking to the Ansata now.
Right.
I mean, there's absolutely no reason. If they got 5,000, they got a list of 5,000 people, and their leader's dead. Now is actually an excellent time to wipe them out. And maybe that's what happens. Maybe that's not what happens. Or maybe somebody on the inside actually starts supplying the Ansata more. We have no idea. And I'm okay with Star Trek not taking a position. I'm a little bit bothered that the Enterprise didn't take a position. The Enterprise's position was, eat my dust.
Right.
I can't get out of here fast enough. Thank you very much for not killing my people. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll let you get back to maybe killing each other. That part was kind of a drag, but it did leave me... I feel like all through our episode covering this episode, I've sounded like I'm on the Ansata side, and I don't know that I'm on the Ansata side. I think I only ended up there sort of defensively because it sounded like you saw no place for them because they were just, quote, terrorists.
I feel like but I feel like that's kind of the failing of this episode. Like, yes, we humanize Finn, the person,
right,
a little bit here, but and I'm perfectly fine with moral ambiguity, and I'm perfectly okay with an ending that isn't neatly wrapped up. You know, I think Star Trek can be very powerful when it does that. But you know, here's the thing. It was a far more interesting message to me when Star Trek gave us lessons like war is stupid than I think just a message of violence is bad. It's bad, so put down the gun. You know? That may be too subtle a difference, but to me, I think it's kind of profound. Because when Star Trek told us war is stupid or racism is stupid, look at this spiral that happens and look at really where it's coming from. That's when you have an episode that you actually get to ponder over and over and over again. This is an episode that just, again, it's Beverly putting on the mom voice. Now put down the gun.
See, I disagree. I mean, here's the thing. You have, just in the past few weeks, I can't remember which episode it was exactly, but just in the past few weeks, you've applauded Star Trek for humanizing the enemy. I mean, the problem is there is no enemy in this episode. I mean, we humanize the bad guys and we humanize the good guys. And what we realize when we do that is there are no good guys and bad guys. There are two sides of this, and how they get out of it is a really good question. And not one that Star Trek is prepared to answer. They do fall back to their standard answer, which is, let's not kill, let's talk.
Right,
but even in doing that, I mean, they do that by way of George Washington, who would have been more than happy, I assume, to have sent the Declaration of Independence and have the UK go, you know what, that sounds good. I think he would have been better off. He would have been happier probably not having to kill anybody for it, but when it comes to it, then he felt like he had to. So yes, ultimately the message is no more killing. Except, I mean, the logical android stands there in the middle and goes, yeah, but sometimes you gotta, right? And Picard's like, yeah, I don't really like to think so. And Data's like, yeah, but sometimes you do anyway, don't you?
Right.
I mean, it's just, it's...
But that's what I was trying to say before. Like, Star Trek takes on big issues, and these are complicated, complex issues. I don't think they were particularly interestingly handled here. Because at the end of it, like I said, all right, well, we killed the bad guy, see ya. And that's really what we're left with. When Star Trek does something like present a bad guy and absolutely humanize that bad guy and say, here's how you have to change your way of thinking, that's when Star Trek, I think, is really good. And I think this one, as an episode, failed to do that. Like, it got close. It did interesting things with Finn, but in the end, it doesn't add up for me. It's just sort of like, well, okay, we cleaned up the mess we got ourselves into. So good luck for the next 70 years.
Yeah.
And we'll see how you're doing then.
Well, no, they'll be back sooner than that because they got to deliver more supplies to someone.
Continue this mess.
Yeah. We have a thing that we have to do as well, by the way.
Okay.
Let people know, I think. Are we to that part? That Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment? Okay, well then let's do that part. Do you want to do it this week? Because I've been doing it for the past several.
I think you should do it.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. You can find out more at roddenberry.com. All kinds of stuff there. Are you in a buy-in mood? I tend to talk about sort of like the philanthropic stuff and the other project stuff. Do you want to buy something seriously Star Trek? Check out the shop at roddenberry.com.
Not joking around.
Not joking around.
About buying Star Trek stuff.
No, they got a batleth.
Yeah.
You go down to your local comic book store and see if they have a batleth, and then see if they're selling them. And then say, you know who's got batleths? Roddenberry.com. For more exciting Star Trek podcasts, check out Trek FM, that is Trek.fm. And for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit TrekMovie.com.
Next weekend, we are back with Deja Q.
And next week, John, we're back with... Oh, somebody said that before, didn't they?
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. One thing confuses me. If there is no way to get to the Ansata hideout except through the inverter, how did they know there was a space to hide out there in the first place? End transmission.